Things going on with the 50-50, but we want to get things started. First, I'd like to thank the setup crew. If you'll raise your hands, these guys come out way early, and everybody does a little bit, but when we come here, this is why we're able to enjoy a beautiful breakfast, so thank you so much. Also a reminder on the book exchange. I don't know if, oh yeah, we do have some books back there, and those music, and those books you can exchange. Whatever we don't get exchanged, we give to the JCC. So it's a real good deal. And
what about the toiletries?
Toiletries as well. We have eyeglasses and cell phones. If you have any of those go to.
Those are over there.
Okay. So thank you for bringing those in. As far as sick call or no longer on sick call, I'm glad that Arnie Rosen is with us. Arnie had a little problem with his eye, but he's back in business with us, so glad you're here with us, Arnie.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Ed to give a brief finance report. And by the way, Ed had a little fire in his house, so if there's a fire sale, we'll understand why.
On the fire, just briefly, we were very lucky. My wife smelled a little electrical smell, and it was about 8 o'clock Sunday night, and 5 minutes later we got out of the house and called the fire company, and we've got damage mostly in the attic area and down into the second floor, but we were very lucky. We could have been asleep, we could have been away. If we were away, I'm sure the whole house had gone up. So, but
what actually caught fire?
Electrical wiring, it's a 45-year-old house. It looks like a staple that was holding Romex or whatever that, the wiring probably contacted each other. Maybe the insulation of the wiring dried out or the vibrations over the years. I don't know. That's what they think caused it, but we were very lucky.
And there's no connection between Ed's fire and Bob giving the insurance presentation on fire. Totally unrelated. Wasn't planned.
And we're sticking to that.
Bob's my official advisor. Anyway, treasurer's report. We have 32 here today, I believe, and everybody paid, which is nice.
Thank you, captains.
And other than that, things are moving right along. The transition from Marty, which is a tough set of shoes to fill. So we're trying to keep up. Thank you.
You got 35 years of service, longer than he did.
And also thank Bob and others who are handling the 50-50 for us. As far as membership, Dick Knopf is just getting off his cruise ship, so he's not here today. But we are in the process of compiling the JAG survey, the Jewish Athletic Group, the membership interest survey, and we'll be using those things in order to plan our meetings for the future. As far as the JAG report, Dave, you want to give us a...
Basically, the big thing here is today is the picnic. Any athletes that want to go out there with their families, it's at the JCC camps. And they got hot dogs and hamburgers and chicken and all that kind of hazardized. There'll be a home run hitting competition and a softball game. And if you want to use any of the facilities up there, you can. And I'm going to be going up there right after this meeting. I don't know of any forthcoming competitions. Usually I schedule the pinochle competition for JAG, but it's usually in July, and I have been on the road almost constantly for 2.5 months. So I've not been able to do that. So when that's going to be, I don't know, and it may be in the fall, but we'll let you know when that comes up. Don't have anything else to mention about the JAG. Right.
Well, again, they have the home run hitting contest. Dave, you'll let me know when they have the drag yourself to first base competition. I'm ready for that.
I can do it backwards.
Thank you, Dave. And also, there's a fall season. If anybody is interested and hasn't signed up for softball, they are trying to start a fall season. Irv, would you want to mention about your casino trip?
My name is Eric Fleischer. I'm president of the JC Men's Club. We're going to Atlantic City on the 28th of August. Anyone here that's a member of JCC that would like to go, just give me your name and I'll put you on a list for going to Atlantic City. There's going to be a show there. It's $20, and they also give you $10 to play on at the casino. So all you have to do is pay your $10 and you can come along with me as long as you're a member of JCC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irv. One of the things that I'm trying to do is increase the number of activities, particularly for bringing in new members. And one of those endeavors is our fantasy football. Currently, we have 8 people signed up for fantasy football. Bob Greenberg, Ed Silver, Rich Moskowitz, Art, Marty, Nuri Boardman, my son Todd, and me. What we're trying to do is to cultivate something where you could bring in an uncle, it could be a grandfather, father, grandson type of thing. We're trying to cultivate interaction and possibly getting additional new members out of it. So if anybody else is interested, we are looking for 2 to 4 more teams. You don't have to really know a whole lot about football. Almost any store is going to have the fantasy football cheat sheets. And the website that we will be using updates their cheat sheets probably every hour. So it's not where you have to know a whole lot as long as you can read a name off of a cheat sheet. Those people that I mentioned, if I could ask you just to stay after the meeting briefly so we could try to finalize that and pick a date for, we have to have a draft. So I would appreciate if you just stay for a few minutes after the meeting. And we have to set up a location. Any questions on that from anybody? Okay. Ed, JCRC report? Actually, I'll have you do JCRC and the Bible study at once.
Not a whole lot to talk about with JCRC. As you know, at our last meeting, there was a big controversy about the Marlton school systems not recognizing the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, and they were going to start the school year. JCRC was behind the scenes influencing them, and they did in fact change the schedule so that the school will not open up at Rosh Hashanah. Mount Laurel insisted on opening up at Rosh Hashanah, and in fact they did change that. So that, yes, sir.
I was going to say, I don't think the issue was the second day of Rosh Hashanah. The issue was comments made.
Oh, I'm not being clear. That was, yes, we were all, in fact, you want to say something about that? I'll shut up for a second.
No.
Yeah, there were,
I think that's the key issue.
the big issue in Marlton, of course, was that one of the school board members made anti-Semitic remarks, and there was a lot of pressure for her to resign. The JCRC actually did not want her to resign. They just wanted her to acknowledge her mistake. As I reported last meeting, my son is on the school board, so I got a lot of information about that. He was sitting right next to her when she made the comments, so I got a lot of inside information about that. Mount Laurel did, in fact, change their school opening date. The JCRC, I was hoping Mike Perloff would be here because he attended, met with the UN ambassador from Israel, and Mike was part of that. I was hoping he would discuss some of that. So that's about the JCRC report. In terms of the Bible Club, as Don had indicated, we're trying to increase more activities to keep the men's club more vital and interesting. And we went out and bought a series of CD lectures on the Hebrew Bible. And we were hoping to see if there was any interest generated. We're not sure quite how to use this. So there was a board committee meeting. We screened the CDs. There was a consensus that it didn't look like it would be something of interest to the whole group. So what we're going to do is use it as a backup in case a speaker doesn't come. But as a secondary issue, we're wondering if there would be a separate, just like the investment club, an interest in a separate group meeting independently to study the Bible. The CDs are about 24 lectures, about 30 minutes long. They're very entertaining and educational. I'm going to send out another email. We have 3 members so far who have shown an interest in creating some form of a Bible study group, whether it's going to be a breakfast meeting somewhere, an evening meeting somewhere, to meet after the meeting here. We're not sure yet. Just for my awareness, though, would anybody be interested to be included in the Bible study? Or was the committee correct? Okay. The other thing that we agreed to do is if anybody wants to borrow this for their own use, just see me. I'll bring it here every time we meet. And
Who does the lecture?
Professor Amy Jo Levine from the Vanderbilt University Divinity School.
Thanks, Ed. Mike Perloff is actually still at the convention for the MAR, the region. Dave, did you have anything you want? National Convention.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add on MAR? Or?
I'm actually the liaison between this club and MAR. And if they have anything that they would like to make sure that I present to the club and so forth, I've not been given any requests in that regard. I was asked to make an evaluation of the club. There is an outstanding club award. We have a big problem, however, because we don't belong to a synagogue. So they have things like worldwide rap and various other things that you can only do if you're part of a synagogue. So I sent my evaluation way back, and I said, obviously, we're not going to make it. I'll give you whatever I got. And there's no point in continuing evaluating because, you know, we can't make the criteria that other clubs have. Although I would assume that in the non-highly religious areas, we probably are doing very well.
All right.
But I sent it in, and I don't know what's happened after that point. But there's nothing new coming down the pike that I know of that they've asked me to bring forth to you as a president.
Okay. Thank you. One of the activities that we've had for quite a while is the investment club, and I'd like to ask Art to give an overview. We have a lot of new members, and they might have some interest in that.
Good morning, everyone. We've had the investment club functioning as part of the men's club now for 17 years. And despite all the jokes made about the returns of the investment club, we're actually doing quite well. We meet every Sunday meeting immediately following the meeting, except for those times during the spring and early summer where I'm involved in softball. At those times, we try to schedule meetings during the week at one of the members' homes. So roughly, we meet once a month. Everybody exchanges ideas. We buy, we sell, and we get by. So if anybody is interested, we'll be meeting again today, right after the conclusion of the men's club meeting, right here. And if you're not a member, if you're a new member of the club and you're not a member of the investment club, feel free to sit in. And if you're interested, just let me know. Thanks.
Show them the money.
Thanks, Art. I had no idea it was 17 years. Right? Wow. That's great. That's great. There was some question whether we should have a meeting in August. Some years we have had it, some years we haven't. So I think the easiest way to handle it is with a show of hands if you felt that you would like to attend a meeting in August. If you'll raise your hands, that would be August 25th. Well, looks like, all right, we will plan a meeting for the 25th. I'm not sure if I could be here, but if not, I'm sure one of my VPs could fill in for me. So we will plan.
Do we have to clear that with Marcy then?
We already have the 25th as a date, so I think we're good. Okay. And with that, Ed, I'd like you to introduce our speaker, if you don't mind. You'll just pass that over to him when he comes in.
David Swartz, who arranges for our speakers, ordinarily does the introduction, but in my capacity as the board member for the JCRC, it's been my privilege to take over. You're not probably familiar with the fact that the JCRC has a number of activities beyond their stated mission. As you know, that they have the Holocaust Museum downstairs, but in addition, they run a program called Bookmates. And we were fortunate to have a member of Bookmates as a volunteer who's going to present. Merrill Friedman, he has a career as a retired real estate agent, and he does a number of other volunteer activities, including Bookmates, and he's going to explain a little bit more about the JCR program of Bookmates.
A few weeks ago, I was having lunch. My wife and I went out to lunch, and I saw 4 people that I used to do business with. There was a couple of commercial brokers and a couple developers, and they wanted to talk to one another and schmooze and whatever. And in meetings like that, you don't really talk about trying to get their business. You're just getting to know each other, just trying to be friendly with one another. And basically what you're doing is you're solving the problems of the world. Biggest problem we have here that seems to always be discussed is Camden. How do we do business in Camden? How do you bring industry to Camden? What do you do? Because I mean, these, you know, it seems to be beyond help, and maybe it is. And I remember in those conversations, I imparted my great wisdom for what it was worth. You got to start with the children. You got to start with the youngest children, and make certain that they're literate, make certain that they enjoy learning, and then they might have a chance to grow up to be good kids and good adults. Who really knows? Somebody else should do that, because I'm not going to do it. I mean, I don't have time. You know. And then 4 years ago, I retired, and I found that I have lots of time. A woman by the name of Jane Belli, who I think is the chairperson of Bookmates, but I don't know. And by the way, Bookmates is a joint venture between JCRC and the Catholic Jewish Commission. Jane happens to be Catholic, so she brings me to an organization that's almost entirely Jewish, which is not a bad deal. But she said, she told me that I would probably enjoy doing this, and I just, you know, yeah, sure, you know, why not? And I'm not sure I really intended to do it, but she introduced me to Rhonda Chevron. And Rhonda is just an incredible woman. And she's like, you just talk to her, it's like being in a hug. And she is, I think, the only employee of Bookmates. Over 200 members, and she's the only employee. And our global headquarters, by the way, is down the hall. Anyway, I joined up, and I said, okay, I'll do this. And I had to wait a little bit because, you know, school starts in September, but the teachers have to get organized, everything has to happen, and I get an assignment in October. And I'm told to report to a teacher in a particular room, and she's going to give me another teacher and whatever. And I meet with a woman by the name of Laura Black. I will name names for these people because they're fantastic. And this was her first experience with Bookmates. She didn't really know what to do, where to take me. And I said, Laura, you've got a first grade class here, and it's filled with kids. Give me a couple kids, I'll read to them. And it didn't seem like a very big deal, but I got started. And basically all we do is we get a couple of kids that we'll have for the entire semester, the entire school year, and we spend a half an hour with each one, and we read to them. There are books available in the library, there's books available here. I found that I like to go to the book warehouse, pick up a few books for $2 to $4, and after we finish reading with the kids, I give it to them. And it becomes a real treasure. And I tell them something that, gosh, I remember my bar mitzvah, when the rabbi handed me a siddur and he said, tear it well. And I've always remembered that, you know, read this over and over. You know, you see it closed, they used to say, wear it well. Well, a book should be torn from constant use. And the children, some of them really reacted. I mean, at first, you know, I had one kid that I might have read to under the table because that's where he was. He's a first grader. He had no interest in anything except running around. And I didn't know what I was doing. Keep in mind, there's something that's really important because there's teachers in this room, there might be social workers in this room. I am neither. I know nothing about teaching. I know nothing about social work. I am not going to give these children advice. I'm going to be their friend. I'm really just going to be their friend, and I'm going to read to them, and I'm going to have fun with them. And hopefully they will learn to enjoy books. Well, I found that some of these little kids, I mean, I wind up buying, for one of them, Spider-Man comic books because that's all he wanted to know. And if that's all he wanted to know and that was in a book, that's what I'm giving him. And we read it. Didn't do that later on, but at first I thought it was kind of cool. Laura always assigned me, and I've been working with her now for 4 years. And I'll tell you, I have so much respect for her and the other teachers who I've gotten to know because they're faced with a daunting task. How do you teach all these kids? And I'll go through some of the issues because all I'm going to do, by the way, is just tell a few stories. And if people think this is going to last 45 minutes, you got another thing because it ain't. Because I'm reading to these kids. They're beautiful children. She wound up always giving me one child that was going to be difficult and one child that was going to be a joy. And it was always the case. And I had, let me just say that these kids in first grade, and now last year I had second graders for the first time because she was moved to second grade. By the way, this was our third building. Our third building. The first one was condemned. They moved to another building, which was apparently temporary, and then this was a third building. These children have to go through war zones to get to their buildings. And let me back up a minute. I chose to go to Camden. Bookmates reads to kids in Burlington, Camden, and some in Gloucester County. There's kids all over, including Cherry Hill, that need somebody to read to them. It shocked me to think of that because you know what we do with our kids and our grandchildren, and you know we're reading to them all the time. Anyway, one of my children, who I'll never ever forget, Laura asked me to read with him because he had no men in his life and he needed some male to be around. And I said, okay. So I meet this child, first grader. And he speaks in barely a whisper. You could barely hear a word he says. And I open a book and I said, would you like me to read to you or would you like to read to me? And he said, I'll read to you. And as soon as he started reading, and this was a first grade book, he read aloud. He read so that I could hear every word he said, and it was obviously a joy to him. And I realized very quickly that this child needed more than first grade books. So I began to bring in more and more advanced books. First grade, we're reading books on Barack Obama, we're reading books on George Washington, on Abraham Lincoln, and we're discussing them. This child is brilliant. Both of his parents are in prison forever. He has no parents. He's being raised by some distant relative. One day I sat down at the table, and you really have to be kind of public. You don't want to be in private with any child. It's a crazy, sick world. So, we have little alcoves in the hall that we can sit down and read. And normally we sit next to each other so that either I can show the child the words or the child can show me the words. And For some reason, he sat down opposite me, and I opened up a book, and it was on Barack Obama. And it was not a first grader book or a second grade or even a third grade book. And he starts reading. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I like to read upside down. I mean, this child is a genius, and his favorite subject is not reading, it's math. Well, one of the things I thought I really needed to do was to build this child's ego, because it was obvious when he was speaking so softly that, you know, he just didn't want to be seen or heard or anything like that. And like I said, I'm not a social worker. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm always telling him he's terrific. By the end of the school year, he was a little more than terrific, but he was a little obnoxious too, because, I mean, you know, somebody's telling him he's terrific, and he never heard that before. I went to the office at the end of the school year, towards the end of the school year, and I asked if it would be a good idea for me to contact his caregiver, which was an aunt. And I thought what I'd like to do is meet them over the summer. Now, I'm not going to put this child in my car, and I'm not going to take him alone because I belong to this organization, and there's lots of liability, even though, you know, we've not mentioned it, but of course there is. And they gave me his aunt's number, and I called her, and she was really excited that somebody was interested enough to call and see what we could do over the summer. And I said, you know, let's do this. Let's meet at Barnes & Noble. You and I will sit down, we'll have coffee. Let this child and his brother pick out some books. And then we'll sit down, we'll talk about the books, maybe we'll go out to lunch. It'll be a nice thing. And she's, oh, wow, that's great, that's wonderful. Well, I called her no less than 5 times. No response. Now, I know she had my number because she butt dialed me one time and hung up as soon as she knew it was me. I don't understand why they don't want to help these children. But the other issue becomes the fact that you've got this obviously very gifted child, and he's not the only gifted child, but in the same room with children that are probably going to have to repeat first grade, with children who are normal, you know, who can learn, and you've got a teacher. You've got a teacher who's got to teach to everybody, and her, you know, she's being evaluated, and it's so difficult. There's teachers here, you all know, you know what I'm saying. It's really, really hard, and but they get no help. They really don't. I know that there's a lot of money spent on kids in Camden because I've seen the statistics. It's a lot more than, it's more money spent per child from what I understand in Camden than is spent in Cherry Hill or Voorhees. Where the money goes, that's above my pay grade. I have no idea. But there's the money there if it just would filter down to the children. This past year, I had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The girl was my treat. She has a working mother, no father, but a working mother and a woman who takes very good care of her children, reads them every night. This is the 3rd girl that was in this elementary school, and all the teachers said the same thing. These girls are wonderful. And she was. I mean, she was just terrific. And, you know, we would read, and sometimes she just wanted to spend some time gabbing. Well, you know what? That's okay. I mean, I'm not there to do more than they want to do. I'm supposed to be their friend. That's what I am. And I love it. The other child is one of my favorites. And he couldn't read very well. He wanted me to read to him, and he hung on every word. This is 2nd grade, and I started reading chapter books, and when we would cut off, and he would remember exactly where we left off, and he really appreciated being read to. And then for some reason he would go out and pick a fight, and he'd get suspended. And So what do they do when they suspend him? They send him home for 3 days where he watches television. He lives, I find out later, with a drug-addicted mother. I went home one day and I said, I want to keep him. I want to raise him. He's a good kid. He's wonderful. He doesn't have a chance. And my wife, of course, said, you know, that's not possible. And that's one of the things everybody has to remember about Bookmates. You can't keep the kids. You got to give them back. But this guy, he would be really tired in the morning. He'd be tired any time I'd read to him. And I remember once I said to him, aren't you getting any sleep? And he'd say, no, it's really hard. Well, what's the matter? Well, sometimes there's not enough room on the floor, and people are stepping over me, and this is a good child. This is a good child, and he doesn't have a chance. He does not have a prayer. Well, anyway, he might actually, because the last day of school, he said that he was really excited about the summer. And I said, what are you planning on doing this summer? He said, well, there's some people from DIFUS who are going to take me away. You know what DIFUS is? He doesn't know. Anyway, forgive me, I get emotional with these kids. They're wonderful children. They're no different than my grandchildren. They have the same intelligence. Doesn't say much for my, no, they're bright kids. They're good kids, and they're not going to be, for the most part. Some of them are going to be raised just like our kids are raised. They won't have any money, but they'll find a way because their parents will find a way. And some won't, pure and simple. Just wrote down a few talking points. And I've said most of them. It really doesn't take very long to talk about caring for and loving these children who gave me more than I could ever give them. I remember as a kid, I used to really look forward to the last day of school, and I couldn't wait to leave and have my summer. This time, when the last day of school came, I was really bummed, I have to tell you, because I missed them. And I'm looking forward to the next 2 kids that I get. And by the way, when a kid is absent, I take a substitute. We have a lineup of substitutes. And but the children they all want to go. They all want to read. They all raise their hands, oh, pick me, pick me, pick me. And thank God I don't have to be the one to pick them. Laura picks them. And one was a little girl who was the cousin of the one that's so sweet and good and cared for, etc. And I read to her, and she read to me. And I looked at her, and she was just all bruised up. She was not in good shape. And I spoke to Laura afterwards, and I said, well, what's with this child? She said, she's always being beaten. She's been stabbed. She's been beaten. She's fighting through it all. She's trying to learn. Our kids don't have to fight through it all. Our kids have us. Our grandchildren hopefully have us. And we read to them, and we play with them, and we teach them, and we mentor them. And talking about mentoring, I was asked this year to mentor a 5th grader in the same school, right up the hall. So I meet another incredible teacher, Christine Pratt, who is teaching special ed to these 5th grade kids. And she asked me to, if I would just talk to and try to be helpful to one of the children. Turns out this child tells me that all he wants to be is a Navy SEAL. And I said, well, I was in the Navy, not a SEAL, wasn't much of a sailor, never been on a ship, but I wore a sailor suit, you know. And it was okay. But we started talking, and, you know, what does he know about being a Navy SEAL? Just so happens I have a friend who is a retired Navy SEAL. And I told him about this young man, and he, next time I saw him, he gave me 2 SEAL Team 6 patches, which I gave to this young man. Well, later, the next time, the following week, this boy, special ed kid, tells me that he's writing a book. I said, well, that's great. I love to write books, and what's your book about? And he said, well, I have a few pages. And I said, would you like to read them to me? Because I said, I don't care about spelling or grammar or anything. I just want you to write. And I love writing. So why don't you read it to me? And he started reading me a 5th grade version of what it would be to be in the military and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't terrible. And I enjoyed hearing it. And I told him, do you think you can do more? And he said, oh, I'll bring in more next week. And he brought in more. And I gave him these patches, and he was beside himself. He couldn't believe that somebody gave him this. Well, I told my friend that how excited he was about getting those patches, and my friend happened to have a ball cap on that had a Navy SEAL piece of brass emblem on it, whatever it is. And he took it off and he handed it to me. He said, give it to him. Well, the next time I saw him, I gave it to him, and the kid started to cry. He said, nobody's ever given me anything, and you giving me all these things. And I said, well, maybe next year I'll bring my friend in, and you'll meet him, and you can chat with him. And he keeps writing this book. And I'm telling you, he's written a lot of pages. We had scene switches, because I hadn't spoken to Christine Pratt about this, and we're here at the Bookmates Appreciation event. And I said, so what do you think of so-and-so's book that he's writing? He said, book that he's writing? He doesn't write. I said, he's writing a book. He said, he doesn't write anything. He writes nothing in class. He doesn't turn things into me. I said, did you see the patches I gave him? She said, no. Okay, so the next time I see the boy, which is a couple days later, I said, how come you haven't shown your writing to Miss Pratt? And he said, oh no, that's between you and me. He said, that's just between us. And I said, I think you should share it. I think it's really, really good. It's good work. I happen to like to write books, and I write books for my own pleasure. Nobody's going to read them. I write fiction. They're out of my head, and I don't even let my wife read. I do belong to a couple of writers' groups, and we do that. But so I really admire the fact that he does this. And this is a child I want to see next year. I really want to see him. I want to be his friend. I want to be his. I want to push him a little bit. I don't know that he'll pass any test to get even into the military, let in to become a Navy SEAL. But who cares? He's a child that needs encouragement, and that's what all these children need. I made a few talking points, and I think I've actually done them because you guys are not interrupting me, which isn't fair.
Can you tell us more about, like, do you go in every week?
I go every week. Yes, I go once a week. 2 children. I only do 2, and just a half an hour each, and then I go do this little mentoring thing for however long that takes. These children have to go back to class. Now, when I started, I was the only bookmate in Laura Black's class. Now she has 3. We need many, many more. We have about 200 members. We have over 200 members, readers, mostly women, mostly all retired. Not everybody's retired. Not all the women are retired. Most of the men are retired. And there's not too many men. There's not nearly enough men. And frankly, that's what we need more than anything, because these children don't have men in their lives. They universally do not have fathers. There's not one child that I've read to in 4 years that has a father. They're gone. Their fathers are sperm donors. That's it. And they're not in their lives. Not the good ones. They need men. Sir.
You started 4 years ago. You said you followed up on the children you mentored at the beginning to see how far along they are now.
I haven't formally followed up. Sometimes I see them in the halls, and I get a big hug. And I know I didn't do any harm. By the way, when they hug me, this is just terrible. I go like this. I don't hug them back. I wish I could. I wish I could hug them. I wish I could keep them. But I don't. But they don't seem to notice. The one boy who was really, really bright moved out of our school. I have gotten regards from him from other children. But that was it. I don't know whether we're doing any good at all, but we're not doing any harm. And whatever we do for them is more than they'll get otherwise. And like I said, we need men.
When you volunteer, what's the process? What orientation, what training, what are you informed about and so forth? So from the beginning to how you got started in the school.
Yeah, I met with Rhonda. She wanted to set up a training. There were none at the time. So she said, this is what you do, you read to them. And what I learned later is some people do other things. If they can't get a child to sit still while they're reading, they bring coloring books and let them color. They do things to get them into it. I've never done that. I've never done games with them. I really try to get them to read or talk. But as far as training is concerned, you've just had it. Sir.
Just two quick comments, two questions. First, I are a product of Camden Schools many, many moons ago. So.
You is one?
Yeah, graduated from Woodrow Wilson. The money that you're talking about, by the way, rough average in this area is $18,000 a student. Camden is $27,000
I know.
a student.
I saw it.
It's a black hole.
It's a hole. Philadelphia, by the way, which has been decimated. They're getting, dribbles are coming back, is $9,000 a student, okay? And yet they don't want to spend $9,000 a student. Sir.
And, hang on just a couple of seconds. You get a free armed guard back and forth to your car every time you go out of school?
No, but I don't park on the street either.
Okay. I noticed you mentioned mostly first grade students and one fifth grade student. What's the range? Is that the normal range, like first to fifth
Yeah,
grade?
kindergarten to second is normal. The fifth grade, that's just something that Rhonda asked if I would do. And
And
I had
roughly how many days a week for your
one.
students?
It's nothing. It takes nothing. You know, I've been given appreciation awards. I've been done all the. What did I do? An hour a week. What is the big deal? There's nothing to it, and yet, it's embarrassing because people are so grateful for the hour a week. It means nothing, but apparently it's appreciated. I mean, I've done a lot of volunteer things that nobody cares about at all, and it's a lot harder than this. Did you want to ask?
My wife is a bookmate.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she's working in Thomas Paine. And I see at the end of the year, the kids makes her all kind of picture.
Yeah.
They stand and they hug her. And she had a problem with a kid that didn't want to settle down. She decided she went to the store, she bought a sticker from dinosaurs.
Right.
That's turned the kids completely around.
It's things like that. It's what we would do with our own grandchildren, because they're not that much different than our own grandchildren. They might look different, but at that age, despite the fact that they have nothing, they have less than nothing, if that's possible, they're still just like our grandchildren. They're great. Gentlemen?
Is there any form of criteria how the teacher selects a child?
No. Not formally, but it's a fairly careful selection. I mean, like I said, Laura wants to give me one that really needs help. Sometimes help with their reading lists, and I'll go through their reading list with them. And when I get a chance to do that, they'll score 100. When I don't get a chance to do it, they get a 0. There's the difference. And then she gives me a treat. You know, she gives me a kid that's a joy. And, yes, sir.
There's a state regulation that a certified teacher must be with the kid at all times. And yet you seem to indicate taking it out of the classroom.
Yes.
How does the school deal with that?
I have no idea. I hope we're legal. But we're in the hall. We're just outside the room. We're in the hall. There's just a little alcove with a little chair. And
So you're visible.
yeah, visible at all times.
I'm sure that's what Mr. Crawford's saying, that it's under the supervision of the teacher, even though you're in a hall.
Yeah, but I guess that's right. I hope we're not breaking any rules, because we're going to keep breaking them if that's the case, because they really need us. As little as it is, it's shocking to me that we do so little and it means so much.
I raise that question not to be argumentative.
That's okay.
It's just that some of us who are in other schools have to be very conscious of that regulation, because it is enforced by the state when they find out.
Well, I suppose because I'm right there by the classroom, it's okay. I don't read in the classroom because it's disruptive.
Or you could check, if you got some time, look up Bookmates under the state auspices and say if there's some quote-unquote exemption.
Oh,
for that.
yeah, I don't think they've done this haphazardly. And we've been around for a long time. I've only been doing it for 4 years, but it's much longer than that. And you know, we have a fairly large steering committee, and I'm sure somebody's looked into it. And if they haven't, I think I'm going to. But there's no intention of breaking a rule, sir.
I'm a former elementary school principal, so
Ah.
somewhat familiar. But anytime I had help in the classroom, I always had it in the classroom, in the back, in the corner, like.
Well,
That's my experience.
Yeah.
yeah,
Just
but
for
that
like
your
doing
classrooms might have had room to walk down the hall,
Oh, I know.
or walk down the aisle. Your classrooms might have had some empty space. These classrooms don't.
I understand.
Especially in a 100-year-old school sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
I was an original bookmate volunteer.
Really?
That time was only Camden, it was only kindergarten and first grade, and it's, as you have said, it's an unbelievable rewarding experience. But one of the kids I had, I was ready to adopt. His father had been in jail since he was born.
Right.
And these kids, good kids, and they do drugs against them.
Yeah.
Did you have an appreciation dinner for the
Yes.
bookmate?
Well, it's not a dinner anymore because there's so many of us. It's here at the JCC, and they have, you know, fruit and
I'm talking
cake.
about the dinners. There were no parents.
Oh, you mean at school?
At the end of the year.
Oh, at school? There was an appreciation event at my school for the first time. The first one I ever had, and they invited the parents and the bookmates. And there were quite a few bookmates there, and 2 parents.
Yeah.
Which is more, I'm sure, than showed up at night.
Fortunately, very typical.
We had the same thing, and but it's great. I mean, it really is. I really look forward to it every week.
If I can,
In fact, the only reason that I stopped doing it, we did it at the Cream School.
Yeah.
Cream School, and we read to the kids in the library. And the librarian felt we were an interruption of her day, and she would play TV while we were reading to the kids. And she was in the wrong profession.
the two of the schools, 2 of the 3 schools that I've been to, the library is kept locked. There's nobody in the library. The kids are not allowed there. I'm not allowed there. It's locked. So I'm glad they have a library. By the way, my own school in Philadelphia, where I'm very active, we built a $12 million library. You know about it. and they've taken away all the librarians, so it's locked. So hopefully they'll let us fill in. Yes?
It's interesting that you indicated that there were only 2 parents, all these bookmates. Has anybody done some long-range evaluation as to how effective this program is going beyond the time the kids no longer get these lessons?
I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, we don't even know where these kids are. They go from school to school because they move from district to district within the city. They, you know, they're kind of like some of our grandparents who felt that they had to leave wherever they were living in the middle of the night before the landlord came around to collect the rent. But I don't know if that was any of you, but it was me.
Dave, it's also very difficult to find the resources, the money to even study the programs that the school has.
Yeah. Well, what I'm basically saying is this may be one glorious moment in the life of a kid, and then it's back to darkness.
Well, you're assuming that there's record keeping this stuff.
Yeah.
My wife was working with the kid that the parents at the end, they thrown out because they thought to bomb, you know, the base over here in Jersey.
Oy.
She was teaching the kid and they threw the whole family out of the country.
No kidding. Yes, sir.
But the poor kid, he couldn't bring the book at all because his parents wasn't allowed to speak Arabic at all. I don't know.
I've not had one of those experiences.
Yeah, Merrill, you may have some knowledge or opinion on this, but I'm curious as to, now that the state has taken over the Camden school system, whether that's going to have any potential dramatic changes in, A, your ability to access the students, and whether or not the rules will start to be followed.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about that among the teachers at the end of last year. Now, of course, you know, we've not been back. I will be really in effect of whatever happens rather than being able to affect it. The teachers are concerned, real concerned. They don't know if they're going to have their jobs. They don't know where they're going to be. But we'll find out when the school year starts.
But you're also volunteers, so it's not like it costs them anything.
What's that?
Your organization.
Oh, yeah.
Bookmates.
Yeah, our organization doesn't cost very much money. I know that Rhonda Chevron, who is our one employee who we work to death, I know she doesn't make very much. She does it for love, and the rest of us are all volunteers.
State takeover of local school districts has had a resounding non-success rate. I don't expect it to change here. When a state takes over, the schools stay just as bad.
And the state has been involved with Camden a long time,
Yeah.
well before
Nobody
the
took
formal
over Patterson
takeover,
and all.
probably 85% of their budget is state money.
And by the way, Camden teachers are paid far less than my daughter's a school teacher in Gloucester City, which is not a wealthy community by any means. And she's been teaching the same amount of time that Laura's been teaching, and there's almost a $20,000 a year difference in their pay.
So where's that $27,000?
Where does it go? I'd love to know that, but I have no time to get angry. I just don't. You know, I said, somebody asked me to do an introduction for me, and they lost it apparently. But the most important thing in my life right now is I don't do anything that isn't fun. If I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to do it. And let me tell you, I love this. You had a question?
But my wife taught 35 years in Camden, the guidance counselor, maybe about at least 30 years ago, longer than that. She might as well have been a social worker.
Oh, sure, that's what they are.
What took place with the parents and brother, it hasn't changed.
Just know yet that they have not yet returned the guidance counselors to Philadelphia schools. They've been eliminated. They brought back, the other day they brought back the sports and they brought back music. Both are it's very good. But just one.
Free school.
Just one. The president of my school, principal, president, whatever, has 2,400 students and all their records and everything to do with a very, very large school. Same, I think it's 24, same size as Cherry Hill East.
Is that Central?
Yeah. And they brought back, what class?
Oh, no,
Oh.
I used to work for the school district.
Oh, okay.
We said president.
They brought back one secretary. Now, I'm sure, I'm on the board there, and I'm sure we'll fill in. We'll take turns going there answering the phones.
But sometimes you don't realize, being in Cherry Hill, Voorhees area, that just a little bit outside of those areas. I remember one year I had 25 students that had at least one parent incarcerated. Out of about three, I mean, I've seen homes where the kids were living literally on dirt floors with 10 to a room. It's like a different world sometimes as soon as you get out from the periphery of.
Where did you teach?
I was a principal at Buena Regional, that was Atlantic County. And
Yeah, that's a different population,
it's,
yeah.
you just, you think you're in a different world.
Yeah, you are in a different world.
And it's sad, and that's why I commend Merrill.
Well, you know, I want to say just one more thing. My high school in Philadelphia, Central High School, 40% of the kids come 208. 40% of the kids come from below the poverty line. 40%. Okay, 100% of the kids are going to go to college, and 100% of those kids have parents who give a darn. Okay, they all have supportive parents. Back to school night at Central is every bit as congested as it is at Cherry Hill East, and they come from the city. A lot of them don't speak English. They don't look like us. They really are poor. And yet they all come, and the children are supported, and they're going to do well. And that's a lot of kids. We have 625 in the freshman class. A lot of kids. So there's, it's about parents. It's about the parents.
One other question.
I'm just going to make a comment based on what, and this took place when they were having all the problems in Camden. I'm going back to maybe the late 80s to early 90s. I met a school teacher who was in Camden, and she was afraid for her own life. Woman, she says, I'm just hoping that when they open up, I think she said the Rice School in Malton Lakes, that she could get in there, she could transfer. She didn't even want to stay in Camden. That's how afraid she was, and I think there were many teachers like that. I met a fireman back in when I was on my way to see my son in Colorado Springs. He was glad when he could get out of Camden. We were all the attacks that were going on.
Well, I'm only there an hour a week,
Yeah.
hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. But I do have some papers over there if anybody's interested in becoming a bookmate. Elderly women from Bookmates are all throughout Camden. We could use some men. Thanks, guys.
And Merrill, I'd like to give you the certificate of appreciation for a very interesting presentation. That includes a one-year membership to our organization, and we certainly appreciate your efforts. So,
Well, I'll be here next.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. And I'll be back next month.
great. And there's one other duty you have as our guest speaker. You have to draw our 50-50 winner.
I want you to know I paid for this one. Just the one?
Just one.
Okay, you read it.
John, 42.
Oh, $42. 375089. Is that right?
You're asking me. Yes.
Thank you. Bob? Gentlemen, thank you for attending.